This is Las Vegas Real Estate Now with local real estate expert Harvey Blankfeld.
Where we want to educate you about our market, empower you to make wise decisions, and help you engage with our expert contributors. I want to talk about another topic as we're coming up. Today's the last day of November. There are houses on the market out there right now. There are people going into escrow as we speak today and this weekend. And yes, people do buy during the holidays. It does happen. It's a little slower usually. If you want to follow the trends of real estate and look at the history, you'll see that during the holiday season, things do slow down a bit here. But there are people out there buying and selling. And the thing I want to talk about is should you want to close on 12/31 or before, or on 1/1 after? Do you care if you close in this year, in 2019, or in 2020? So let's talk about the variables. And the answer is it depends. Okay, first of all, it depends if you're a buyer or a seller. If you're a buyer, I think you always want to close before the end of the year. And the reason is that whatever tax deductions you can take out of the purchase, you can use for this year's taxes. Whereas if you close on January 2nd or January 3rd, nobody's going to close on January 1st, by the way, guys. Just so you know, that's a holiday. You're not going to close that day. If you were to close on January 2nd or 3rd or 4th or whatever it is, those tax deductions don't apply till 2020. But if you close on 12/30, 12/31, you can take those tax deductions this year, whatever deductions are there. And you have to talk to your accountant, your tax expert about that. I'm not a tax expert. But I do know that when people are considering that closing date, think about those things. Think about whether or not you want to close on 12/31 or on January 3rd or whatever date that may be. That's if you're a buyer. If you're a seller, it also depends. If you're a seller and you're an owner-occupant, probably not that critical either way, because more times than not, as an owner-occupant, you probably can fall into a category. If you fall in the right category, you're probably not going to be paying taxes on the transaction. You're probably not. I mean, again, I'm not an accountant. This is not me giving you tax advice. I'm just suggesting that when I'm your real estate agent, we're going to talk about a closing date, and we're going to say, gee, the buyer wants to close on 12/31, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Do you think that's okay? And their question to me is going to be, well, is there any tax implications to that? And my answer to them is going to be very simple. Yeah, contact your accountant and find out for sure. But the history that I'm aware of and what I've dealt with is that most of the time it does not for owner occupants. Now, if you're an investor, that's a different story. If you're an investor, you likely will have tax consequences. And so therefore, you're going to want to wait. You're not going to want to close until 2020 because then the tax hit doesn't happen for another year. Whereas if you close the deal and before the end of the year, you're going to take that tax hit this year in 2019. So the answer is depends. Trading homes is still can have tax implications. It still can. Because essentially what's happening in a house trade, which are pretty rare, but they do happen. But and when you're doing that, you're still basically, that's a conveyance and a taxable event as my understanding. Now, if you do what's called a 1031 property exchange, that's a different story, okay? And Denise brings up a good point. So if you're an investor and you're doing a 1031 property exchange, then in that case, there are no taxes. There are no immediate taxes. You're deferring the tax liability. You're pushing it off till later when you sell that home you just acquired. You're going to sell this home, you're going to acquire another home, and then when you sell that home, you could 1031 it again. You can keep deferring this taxes till later, much, much later in life. But for the time being, there will be none. So you could close this year, would have no impact, doesn't matter.
This has been Las Vegas Real Estate Now. Thanks for listening. And remember to tune in every Saturday at 11 a.m. on 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN.